Your Excellency Muhammadu Sheikh El Ghazouani, President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, and our dear host, Your Excellency Umaru, as represented, President of Guinea-Bissau and Chairman of ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency Mohammed Bazoum, President of the Republic of China, as represented, Your Excellency Mahmoud Boumiya, Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Your Excellency Ambassador Hussein Ibrahim Taha, Secretary General for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Your most respected co-convener of the conference, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayer, President Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace and African Peace Conference, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to join you today at this third edition of the annual African Conference for Peace being hosted in this beautiful and historic capital city of Mauritania. Allow me first, on behalf of my delegation, to express deep appreciation to President El Ghazouani and the government and people of Mauritania for the warm hospitality extended to us since our arrival. I also thank the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace under the tutelage and sterling leadership of Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayer for the honor of nominating me as the recipient of the African Award for strengthening the peace. At today's event, it is indeed a recognition that speaks volumes to the ultimate goal of collective efforts by African leaders to engender peace and stability as prerequisites for development in our continent. This event is taking place amidst growing armed conflicts driven by extremist ideology rooted in misinterpretation of religious precepts and, of course, widespread deprivations of the citizens of Africa and other parts of the world. These developments have, for many decades, become worrisome that they preoccupy all governments and well-meaning organizations as well as individuals in sub-Saharan Africa and beyond. Realizing the danger posed both the growing insecurity to the progress African countries have achieved in their political and socio-economic advancement since gaining independence from their colonial masters, it is commendable that the government of Mauritania, in collaboration with the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace, launched the first edition of the conference in 2020, where the inaugural conference deliberated on the role of Islam in Africa, tolerance and moderation against extremism and sectarianism. The theme of the third edition of Peace Conference, Enter All in Peace, still corroborates the lingering effect of insecurity with linkages within and outside the region, thereby necessitating the imperative for continued concerted engagement with governments and international partners to cushion its effects and outright eradication. I would now like to pay tribute to the relentless drive and courage of His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayer for his initiative to promote peace through the process of combating extremist ideas that promote violence in our societies. Your scholarly teachings should be given due dissemination to counter the terrorist narrative misrepresenting Islamic thoughts. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, global terrorism, banditry, and other transnational crimes continue to pose enormous challenges, not only to Africa, but to global peace and security. This phenomenon is a perennial threat to sustained economic development and growth. For us in Nigeria, we continue to engage bilaterally and multilaterally to comprehensively win the war against the Boko Haram insurgency and other related terror groups. When I assumed office in 2015, Boko Haram held about 2/3 of Borno State, half of Yobe State, and a couple of local government areas in Adamawa State, all in the northeast of Nigeria. We have been able to retrieve these portions of territories by investing over $1 billion United States dollars to acquire hard and software weaponry from the United States and other friendly countries to carry out sustained operations against insurgency since 2015. Our armed forces and those of our partners in the multinational joint task force consisting of Chad, Niger, Cameroon, Benin Republic, and Nigeria continue to demonstrate great bravery while paying the ultimate price in securing our collective freedom. Despite the difficult times we face, we continue to spend very scarce and lean resources to ensure that we have a well-resourced military force to take on this task. Ideally, these are the resources that should be spent on education, healthcare, infrastructure, and other social services. But without peace, we have learned the hard way that our children cannot go to school or seek good health care. Similarly, the shrinking of the Lake Chad has resulted in dire consequences of the people of the region losing their traditional source of living, which culminated into the youth being recruited by the terrorist groups. This scenario created serious instability and served as a litmus test for member countries of the Lake Chad Basin Commission in devising means to restore the livelihoods within the region. As a measure to continuing this development, the Lake Chad Basin Commission has begun implementing programs to safeguard the ecosystem of the basin, including seeking global support to return the lake to an economic hub it was known for in the past. Although we are winning the war, however, as a country and sub-region, we continue to be negatively impacted by events in Libya, Central African Republic, the Sahel, and the war in Ukraine. Our region is awash with all sorts of small and light weapons that continue to be freely in circulation, orchestrated by the impact of foreign fighters. We must therefore support peace initiatives to bring political stability in our crisis-ridden areas, such as Libya, Central African Republic, and other parts of the continent, in order to discourage the spread of insurgency, other criminal groups, as well as arms and foreign fighters in these locations and continent-wide. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in this connection, it is imperative for the African countries, through the African Union, to renew initiatives for finding African solutions to the challenges of Libya that have continued to remain very volatile but unstable, hosting not only lack of peace and stability in that country, but development in the Sahel, Central and West Africa, as well as the Lake Chad regions. Too many external interests have pestered on the challenges of Libya for too long and regrettably compounded the search for sustainable solution. This, which have ultimately remained threats to peace, stability, development, progress of our regions and the rest of Africa. It is my hope that the next African Union Summit next month will revisit this matter in a comprehensive and pragmatic manner to free our regions and continent the circles of violence, instability, lack of development, and progress in the sub-regions of Africa that are well endowed with resources that can easily sustain not only the continent, but most of the world. It is my hope that President Macky Sall, as President of the African Union, would take up this challenge at the continent's next summit to refocus on attentions to finding indigenous, sustainable solutions to Libya, as indeed the entire peace and stability architecture of our continent. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to conclude my address, I wish to align myself with the declarations reached at the two previous series of conferences and therefore enjoin and remind this August forum to also give premium to the following: that youth development, particularly skills acquisition, should be a priority to discourage idleness that could lead to religious fundamentalism and extremism. 2, inculcate values and principles of tolerance and peace in educational institutions, and particularly to our youth. 3, African leaders and decision makers should ensure that democratic principles and good governance form the basis for management of affairs in every country in Africa, noting that peace, security, and good governance are inseparable. 4, there is need also for African stakeholders, that is the government, private sector, the civil society organizations, to make concerted efforts to support existing mechanisms and initiatives to build strong and virile institutions that effectively support good governance, which inter alia lead to the development and progress of our countries and continent. 5, African leaders must reaffirm their commitment by demonstrating political will required for ownership of African peace and security architecture and the implementation of African governance architecture. 6, we must also adjust the effectiveness of early warning system and the conflict prevention and adopt policies aimed at resolving the crisis of de-radicalization through continuous dialogues and negotiations. And 7, concretize efforts towards the curtailment and forcible prevention of the circulation of small arms and light weapons, as well as the fostering of the foreign fighters into the African continent. It is my strong belief that if we are able to recommit ourselves to going in these directions with our strong political will, Africa would be the better for it. Thank you very much for your attention.